You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, November 25th. You know what that means. Got my dude here, Weston. Weston, again, not going to ask you how you're doing. I'm just going to ask, how are you holding up on a Monday after the 49ers gave us one of their worst performances, I think, in recent memory?
I'm extremely unwell. So much so that my 18-month-old son, who I made sit through that game yesterday, said he had a few things that he wanted to get off his chest about this team, wanting to know when they're going to win a game that matters. Right, bud? But yeah, I'm not good, Steph. I'm not good. I'm with the rest of the 49er fans right now.
Yeah, we've got an extra guest here on the show today for the audio listeners, Weston's son, who you have a striking resemblance to, Weston, or he has a striking resemblance to you, I should say.
Yeah, he is rather handsome. If we're just,
well, I didn't say that, but
well, I'm saying it for you because nobody else says it during the day.
Oh God. Well, you know what isn't handsome is the 49ers season. It's ugly, Weston. We've been saying this, right, for several weeks now. And it just feels like every time there's a loss, there's still some fans holding on to the little hope that there is less every week. There's less and less hope, and there's still fans holding on to that. Which again, I don't want to shame people for, because I tell people, I say that, you're whatever type of fan you are, you can't really help. If you're positive, you're going to be positive. If you're negative, you're going to be negative. But anyway, I'm just, I'm not positive. I'm not so positive. So that's where we're at. And certainly with the way the 49ers played, this past weekend against the Packers, I think knowing that Brock Purdy wasn't going to play, we kind of figured it was going to be a mess, and that it was. But even still, watching this game, Weston, it started off a mess, right? But there were points where it was hey, this is actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. The 49ers have some life in here. They could make this a game. And that quickly kind of deteriorated as the game went on, in, classic 49ers fashion. But I guess what's your biggest takeaway, Weston? Because I keep looking at this team and I'm they look the same each and every week. Was there anything that looked different to you, good or bad? I'm assuming bad at this point, right?
Yeah, it's not good. I would say ungood for the 49ers is that their product on the field is starting to strongly resemble my golf game, which is not good. And what I mean by that is, throughout 18 holes, I'll hit 10, maybe 12 nice golf shots that bring you back and sucker you in and give you that hope. And there were even things in a 28-point loss that you're oh, where's that been? Oh, if you could just do that time and time again, that's the Super Bowl contending team that we're looking at. But in true 2024 San Francisco 49er fashion, can't finish. It's just glimmers of hope. And hope is a very dangerous thing for those fans that will still tell you, and they're not wrong, Steph, mathematically, the
right,
NFC, it's still there. I think we hold on to the fact that this regime has made runs before, but the product has looked different than it does right now in those seasons where they've made runs, in those final 6, 7, 8 games of the season and got really hot, get into the playoffs and find themselves in meaningful games. But I feel like we're beating a dead horse here. Just week after week, there's nothing that gives me hope beyond that. Now, for those fans, I'll still show up every Sunday. I'll still say, hey, got a shot, you know what I mean? But even if they were to beat the Packers somehow, it's fool's gold. You know what I mean? It's fool's gold. It's not really there. This team is not serious and competing with the likes of the Lions, the Eagles, the Vikings, right? They're not that. They're just not that this year.
Yeah, and to go back to the 49ers playoff percentage right now is 15% as far as playoff probability. The Rams are even worse off after their loss to the Eagles last night. They are at 11%. The Cardinals, they dropped a couple spots in the rankings, right? But their chances are still at 51, which is funny because Seahawks, who won yesterday and are in first place in the NFC West right now, have a 44% playoff probability. But yeah, I mean, I think what we've been saying is all season, really, is that yes, the 49ers still have a chance despite digging themselves into a hole. Like mathematically, they still have a chance. It's very unlikely right now. And the reason I'm personally am choosing not to put any more hope into that is just because the team itself hasn't given me any hope to put into that. Aside from the fact that, they're 2 games. I say they're 2 games behind in the NFC West because they've lost to all of the other NFC West teams. So
Yep.
one ahead of them to one up them on the standings. So with that being said, it's not just that you have to absolutely win out like the rest of the season pretty much, which has more or less been true since like the bye week and we haven't seen any changes. That's my greater point. Like we haven't seen any changes. I would challenge anyone to think of one improvement that this team has shown. Just one improvement this season at any point. Can you think of one, Weston? Because like I tried, I genuinely tried, and I couldn't.
They drafted better.
Yeah,
they had a little more draft capital than they've had in years past, so they had a higher probability of it panning out. But no,
aside from like individual play,
no.
I haven't seen an improvement from this team.
And what were strengths or weaknesses? Can't run to the left side anymore. I don't care if Trent Williams in there. Williams is in there. Fred Warner, where's he been? The linebacker position has been non-existent for 5 weeks, right? The defensive backfield. Listen, there are excuses galore that are all acceptable, and I will take all of them, right? But the reality is we are where we are, and because of that, and because of some of those things, the play in all facets of any product they can put on the field has been worse than it's been in the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah. And then like, as Jedi mentions, like mathematically, right? 49ers still in it, but the team itself looks eliminated already. Like there's no fight in this team. And it's kind of looked that way much of the season. And I think with each loss, like it's like, okay, now we're angry. Now we get the urgency, and then they lose again. And not only do they lose again, but in that loss, like you see what I can only describe as players being checked out and just like not in it, like not locked in, right? So given all of that, it's just hard to, I guess, wrap my head around the possibility that they're even still in it. So in my head, I'm just not really going there.
We've talked about it all since May, that it just feels different. It doesn't feel like it has the same excitement. Players see this. I don't care what to say. They're human. They read it. They take it in. They're very aware of like, hey, this is probably the last time to run it back with this squad that has been such a great locker room and such an eclectic group of individuals. And when, early in the season, when things just aren't falling your way, you subscribe. You subscribe to, this is not it. And it's only human. Like it's a human characteristic to say, like, is it worth investing my all in this season? Like, are the players already thinking about like shutting it down in some capacity? And honestly, where I find it to be most different is instead of finding ourselves at 5-6, a game and a half, let's call it, out of winning your division and hosting a home playoff game, I'm not sitting with the let's go win it. We control our own destiny, blah, blah, blah. I'm actually sitting here with let's shut it down. Like, this is what it is. Let's not make any of it worse. And let's see if it's a real probability of getting some of these people that you're going to retain just back on track. Like, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this, but like the whole Christian McCaffrey experiment coming back after week 10. Got it. You wanted to overload him. Hasn't worked. Shut it down. You know what I mean? Just shut it down. Like, and me of all people, Steph, to come out and say, that's how I'm watching the 49ers. I don't care about the win-loss the back half of the season. I want to see improvement from players that are, I'm so sorry with my son in the background right now. If you
He's
only
crashing
knew,
out over there.
it's actually somebody got me those 49er chains that has the massive pendant that lights up, and that's what he's playing with right now. So
faithful already.
he knows the deal. Like, he knows how to survive in the house. He's just not happy with the product either. Like, that, this is,
I mean, who would be?
Might as well let me be a Jets fan. At least I can attend the games a little bit more regularly. But it's just like it just feels different. I want if we know this roster is going to be different, we also know that there's still 30 guys on this team right now that are going to be on this roster next year. Let me see those guys that aren't the big name ones. Let's get them time. And I'm not saying tank. That is not what I'm saying. You can go out and win some games. I think you just need to try to do it differently. You know, if it looks like Brandon Allen the rest of the way, it looks like Brandon Allen the rest of the way.
I like that you said that, Weston, because earlier, like, I put out a tweet, right, and it was in response to a certain Jake Brendel statistic. And, you know, Brendel has been one of those veterans who has been less than stellar for much of this season, to which I replied that I'm just at a point where I want to see younger players. Yeah. And I feel like younger players can make mistakes, but at least when young players make mistakes, like, you know that they're learning as well. Oh. Like, there's that upside of, hey, they could potentially improve this, right? Over veterans like a Jake Brendel or like some other guys who have been struggling most of this season and have been underperforming. Like, I want to see younger players, right? And that a lot of people were like, wow, like you're throwing away the season. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to mean that, but I think, like, at this point, what do you have to lose? You literally don't have anything to lose at this point. I mean, you don't know if some of these younger players could actually give you a boost, right? Like, you can go out honorably the rest of this season. Hey, look at the Panthers, right? Like, look how they started their season. They're finishing it off honorably. And, you know, they've been one of the worst teams in the NFL for quite some time now. So it's slightly different, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to go out this way. You don't have to go out swinging with the guys you started out with, all right? Because clearly some of those guys are just not doing it for you. So, and two, I feel like younger players at least maybe have a different mindset going into it, because we're talking about everything the 49ers have done has been like they're demoralized, emotionally exhausted. You know, at least like the younger players don't have that. And I think they'd be happy to play for the opportunity. So, but yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No, I think you make a great point with the youngsters is there's a couple things that they're playing for something different. Like, what does Christian McCaffrey have to gain from the rest of this season? What is Deebo Samuel? What Trent Williams, George Kittle, like what, Nick Bosa, like what do these guys, first of all, they all have their bags, right? Like, they're all well compensated. They are all have all pro nods to their names, right? Like, they've accomplished all the personal things. They just haven't won the big one. The rookies have done none of that. The youngsters have done none of that. So they're playing for roster spots, for paydays, for all these things that, like, take the record of the team aside, like, they will be thrilled with an opportunity to routinely be on the field, like, week in, week out, with a good chunk of the season left, right? I mean, you still got 6 games. That's a third of the season, essentially, that's remaining. Like, that's a lot of experience that these ones can gain, and they're playing to be a future. But I don't think you earn anything as a team. Like, there's no consolation prizes. There's no, like, moral victories, as they say. Like, well, we went down together. Well, yeah, okay. We went down, right? Like, does it really need to be together with those, with the vets that, candidly, like, you want to protect them because there's a handful of them that are going to be here next year and are going to contribute to what you're, part of the success. Like, just shut it down. I don't know how else to say that without sounding like I'm saying tanking. I'm not saying tanking. Like you mentioned before, you have nothing to lose, but you have everything to gain, right? Like, hey, even if I want to be super unrealistic and say, you play the rookies and you can go on the run and you can make the playoffs. Okay. Like if that happens, great. You know what I mean? Not gonna, but a lot to be gleaned from that could be beneficial versus missing the playoffs, dragging these folks through another season. Even if you let's say they somehow found a way to win the division. And then you're a one and done playoff team? Like this team is not, like I said, it's not serious. Yeah. Why even the extra game? Why even the extra week of practice? Why even the extra, when you look at people who have clear wear and tear and experience in this league, you just gave Christian McCaffrey a lot of money. Like I'm pretty sure he's part of your offensive game plan next season, regardless of how 2024 went, right? So what are we doing here? Is my thing.
Yeah, I agree. That's where I'm at too. I mean, I just think that if you want to have a little bit of a boost, at least have fans. I'd be a little more excited, I think, to watch some younger players, to watch some different players, I'll say, than what's there. And I can name a few. It's not that I want everyone like benched. Like don't take it to mean that either. No. I don't want people to assume that. But I have a short list of players I'd rather see a younger player in place of, right? Jake Brendel.
Yes.
Devondre Campbell.
Yes.
And Debo, you still got to give him some snaps, I think, but I want Ricky Pearsall to get more snaps, and I want him to get more targets.
And throw Cowing in there. Like, why else would you spend a 4th round pick? You know what I mean? Like, get these guys, get them. Let's see what you have. Like, what's the thing about Debo? Lacks the juice, it feels like, that he's had in years past. And we always reference the contract year, but he had plenty juice moments. I mean, I remember the Eagles game last year in the regular season, like plenty of Debo-esque moments. Like, I feel like people are just taking the extremes on him. Like, one good year, now look at this bad year, when that's not really true. Like, even his rookie year in 2019, he was rather impactful and was part of that run. But, like, you worry about the way that he plays, that physical style, and the toll it's taken on his body, and can't be explosive. But you know what? The element that he brings to the offense is vital to what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. And you see what happens when you don't get the explosives from him, right? It turns into 2nd and 14 because he couldn't get outside on the jet sweep and stuff like that. Like, okay, let's see if you got somebody else here that can play that role a little bit for you. Play a little bit of that joker on the offense and be that tool. Like, by all intents and purposes, Jesus, Ricky Pearsall looks pretty clean with the ball in his hands. It looks like he's got a little speed.
Even when he doesn't have the ball in his hands.
Cowing looks like
open.
He's a big play waiting to happen, right? Like, maybe they're not. But how the hell are we going to know? Are we going to wait? We're going to find out in year 3? Well, that seems like a terrible idea. Like, let's find out now. Look at this kid, dude.
Did he put that on as himself?
Went and got it himself.
He's making a statement.
I
don't know, Weston. I think he's one of these fans that has hope for the rest.
His blood is red, baby. Make no mistake about it. But
I'm not mad at that.
Not even a little bit.
49er media says they need a reset or retool because they have been playing close to 20 games a season. That's true for like the last few seasons. And so like that's another reason too where I'm like, hey, this isn't your year. Like, that's okay. We can move forward. We can move on. Why not get a head start on 2025?
100%.
If you know this isn't your year, why not get a head start? Get a look at some guys for these next few weeks. Get them some snaps and have a better idea of what you have. If some of these younger guys actually end up looking better than you anticipated, it's like, oh, hey, maybe we don't need to prioritize this in free agency or in the draft as much as we thought we did. It's just, I think you could better allocate your resources and better prioritize when you have more information on the entirety of your roster. And I think that just the best way to do that would be getting them some opportunities. But Yeah, I understand that, like, the team, coaches, players, you're not going into it with the intention of tanking. You're not going into it with the intention of, like, hey, we're giving up on the season. Like, they would never say that. I don't want them to say that, you know. I just want something different. I just want something different, and I think everyone could understand where that desire is coming from. Like, you got to
Yeah.
change some stuff up. So,
Yeah, I think, I'm not a big fan of like the retool versus rebuild, because I just feel like it's like, got to find the perfect words. The truth is, every team is retooling every year, right? Like, you're always doing a little things. And I do firmly believe that there's enough talent on this roster that's remaining on this roster that they will prioritize, that you don't need to implode it. But if you want the retooling to make sense, you do everything that you just described, Steph, right? Like, you get the people that are here now, starting with the youth, you see what you have, because that might help you reprioritize what you're doing in the offseason. Let's say D Winters gets a whole lot of play, right? The final 6 games, and looks like an animal. Well, that changes how you probably view Drake Greenlaw in the offseason, or how you view the position. Like, those are significant things. And those players are right here, like right now. You know what I mean? Like, you have enough to field a roster. And I agree, you're not coming out and saying, because you're not tanking. This isn't tank for Bosa. The tank for Tua, when everybody was talking about that. You could lose the next 6 games. You're still not drafting in the top 5. You know what I mean? So what are you really tanking for? But I do think it helps you prioritize. And candidly, the people that you are concerned, like, I don't care what anybody says, they're concerned about Brock's shoulder. Why the hell do you think nobody else really knows about it? You just know it's soreness in the shoulder, right? Like, has anybody come out and, like,
it's
really
been very vague.
Yeah, because it's not good, right? Like, and if we know anything, that this team is consistently shitty, sorry, Steph, I know it's your channel, at reporting injuries with clarity, right? And that's not just a Christian McCaffrey thing. That's a million examples of this, where it was like, oh, it was unexpected. Well, really? Were you monitoring your player all week? Like, I don't understand. Like, I think it's time to, if you can take some health concerns off the table and just recognize where you are in the season, it's not a foolproof plan, but it feels like a better step in preparation towards the next season, right? Like, because look, there's players and coaches who are worried about this season because their livelihood depends upon it. I can understand and I can appreciate that. Mine does not. So as a fan who just talks about this team, I don't want to sit through 2020, 2024 all over again, right? Like, I want where we all expect this 40 and what we expected from this team. I want us talking about competing for the ultimate prize at the end of the season. And I think it's easier to say that out loud, because for the last 4 years, that's exactly what they have been doing, right? So we've seen a lot of good competitive ball, which it's entertainment. So what's better than seeing 20 games that your team is playing in versus seeing 17, right, in the regular season? Like, that's the ultimate form. And of course, I want the Super Bowl. I need some new paraphernalia to hang behind me. But we're saying the same thing, Steph. Like, we're just saying that it's realistically, hold on one second, because my kid's about to run out the door. Hold on, Steph. Oh,
he says, I'm out.
Didn't realize my wife was home. She's like, I'm here. I'm like, oh, thank God. She's the one who opened the door. I was like, how does Houdini get it open? All right. Real talk now. Real talk. Little guy's gone. I had to soften the blow because I didn't want to hurt his tiny little 49er heart.
Well, the 49ers are 17th as it stands after week 12, before the Ravens and the Chargers have played, which I don't think have any bearing on the 49ers draft pick right now. Nope. They'd be at 17. They'd be picking at 17. So not terrible.
No.
Not terrible. I mean, and here's where I want to take the conversation, right? Because I think what the 49ers do going forward is kind of largely dependent on injuries, as it has been for like a good portion of the season. I'm not going to make the excuse that like injuries are the only reason that the 49ers look the way they do, because I think that's a cop out. But
Yeah.
whoops, actually slipped that one in there. All right, where's my, okay, here we go.
Factual.
Injuries. Yeah, it's factual. Factual.
It's that too.
That too. The injury updates are kind of smaller today because there's so many of them. So Dominic Pooney, he, after the game, I guess, was dealing with some shoulder discomfort of some sort. So he got an MRI, awaiting the results. Diamador Lenore bumped knees with someone during the game.
Yep.
You recall, there was a moment where he looked a little shook, and he ultimately finished the game. But just to be safe, they gave him an MRI too. So also waiting on those results. Starting left guard, Aaron Banks. He's in concussion protocol. We know how that goes. It's tough to be ready the following week. Not impossible, but it's tough. So I would expect him in week 13 to be a bit of a long shot to play. As for Jordan Elliott, same thing, also in concussion protocol, defensive tackle. Bernardo Green, 49ers corner, who's been starting these last couple days with Mooney Ward out. He's day-to-day with a neck injury. And as far as the players who didn't play in this game, Nick Bosa, day-to-day, Trent Williams, day-to-day, they're going to be reevaluated throughout the week, see how they feel and how they respond to trying to practice. Brock Purdy, according to Kyle Shanahan, did some light throwing on Monday today. So that's encouraging, definitely encouraging. Feels like a step in the right direction. They, obviously much of last week, they wanted to get him some rest. So Wednesdays, when the team practices again, they're going to have him not throw tomorrow, Tuesday, so he can rest it, see how he's feeling Wednesday. And then the hope is he'll be throwing again on Wednesday. So I don't want to assume anything with Brock Purdy, because I think I did that. A lot of us maybe did that, going into last week. And we saw that turned out he didn't end up playing. So don't want to speculate too much. Just going to take it day by day. Jacob Cowing still in concussion protocol, unfortunately. Mooney Ward, he's continuing to practice, so it seems like he's getting closer to playing. Same with Kevin Givens. He does have a chance to return to practice this week, according to Kyle Shanahan. And a couple of players who have been out all season with injuries, right? John Feliciano, his practice window had been opened, right?
Yep.
This was the final day that the 49ers had to activate him, if they were going to bring him back this season. Kyle Shanahan said his knee did not respond well. So unfortunately, he won't be activated this season. He's set to be a free agent after the season as well. So John Feliciano, I'm not going to get to see him this year. Dre Greenlaw, his practice window is expected to be open this week. That definitely feels notable. All in all, this injury report is a mixed bag. Like you have to be excited about Dre Greenlaw coming back, despite where the season is going, right? Like I can't wait to even just see videos of him practicing. Is exciting to me. And, obviously Purdy practicing again is good news. But we got some new names on the list, right? Which will continue to make things difficult for this team. Hoping that, Pooney's okay. We'll see if Banks can play this week. Like I said, seems like a long shot, but yeah, it's like this, I think, is kind of what puts everything else that we're talking about. It might make it more important, right?
No.
Just bringing in some younger players kind of on need, like if it's a need, that's fine too. But it's like, I understand this team is 1-2 games out from the division, but realistically, you look at everything they have stacked up against them, like injuries included. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. I can't believe we spend so much time talking about injuries every week, because the list just seems to get longer and longer. And yes, Steph, I am with you. I am excited to see Dre Greenlaw back. Maybe we share a difference in opinion. Maybe we don't. I'd love to see his practice window open, but I'd rather not see him activated. I just want to see him resume some football activity, do some things. I know money is going to look a little different, but they actually did a good job at putting themselves in a position to carry over cap, and then with a demo restructure, and then obviously we know what may or may not be coming for the quarterback. I'd prefer they prioritized Dre Greenlaw for a return next season, and maybe missing an entire year due to injury changes the entry price of those conversations. Maybe it doesn't. Still a hell of a player. But again, we just go back to like what I actually brought up while you were talking. The list of 2025 free agents. And the list is not as daunting as I thought it was going to be. And I think of like when I look at what I see on my screen, people who injured. Okay, well, Feliciano, we know he's not going to play here. We know he's a free agent. We know he's not coming back, right? So like, okay, one less person that you're prioritizing because he's got no tape to even say we should be bringing him back this year. But the bigger names are, Charvarius Ward's on there. I think they move on from him. We've talked about that. As long as Renardo continues to play well. He didn't play well yesterday, but if he continues to ascend, Greenlaw's a name, Banks is a name. There's no Dobbs, no Brandon Allen, which there's no backup quarterback on this roster for next year. Jordan Mason, Hufanga, we feel pretty confident that he's probably going to move on. So like the list is not as daunting in my opinion, but it goes back to your original point. Who are you going to play? Where are you going to go find these players, right? Because some of those names on the list probably might not even see the field the remainder of the year, depending upon how this shakes out, what happens with Buffalo. And that's going to help you prioritize the offseason. And you're in at an advantage. You can do it now, right? Like you can do it now versus having to attack this behemoth in February after you just lost a game on a global scale. Like when you don't feel like doing anything, right? The players, coaches don't feel like getting out of bed, don't feel like going back to train. Like you can do it now. I think that's an advantageous position for a team who's still going to be, by all accounts, loaded with talent next season, primed with slaughter him however we want, one of the best coaches in the NFL, or at least offensive play callers. Like, let's start to build around that notion like today, Monday, November 25th.
Yeah, it's not like I'm giving up on the team. I'm just kind of I want to look forward to next season, and I think they have an opportunity to set themselves up a little bit better for next year. And so I just hope they do that at some point, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm fine with them competing to the very end until their playoff chances are at zero, like for their sake, I guess. But yeah, I mean, the 49ers play the Bills this week in Buffalo. That's going to be pretty tough. So if Brock Purdy plays, obviously I'm going to feel better about it. If Trent, Bosa play, I'll feel better about it. But again, like I think it all comes down to the 49ers needing to improve on several aspects, and we just haven't seen that. The 49ers had one of their worst tackling games we've ever seen from them. It was mind-boggling. There was more than 10, I think, in the first quarter alone. It was just uncharacteristic seeing Fred for a few weeks now. He spent the first month of the season on a tear. We're having DPOY conversations about Fred first month of this season, and it just has kind of fallen apart for him since then. And so I don't know what's going on, but yeah, there's a lot wrong with this team that I don't know that it could be fixed from 1 week to the next.
And I if I had to diagnose Fred, I would say that this feels like overcompensation, right? Understanding that players around you are making plays and you're trying to make every single play. And by doing that, you're actually not making any plays, right? Fred he's showing up on the tackles, right? But I would argue that he's not meeting them at the line. He's not filling the right gap. He's guessing wrong. He's taking poor angles. His coverage has been poor for the last few weeks he hasn't been Fred, but I think that comes with the weight of our defense needs to step up and make a play, and I'm the only one who's going to do it. And you got to respect that mentality, but this is why, like, I think Fred is a microcosm of the entire year. Something is just wrong. Like, Fred didn't forget how to be good at football. Like, that didn't just, like, happen. You know what I mean? This guy is going to be a Hall of Famer. And this is going to be a down year on his resume. But I just think there's so many things that attribute to that. And I do think there's a lot to be gained from just we talk about it in our own personal lives, like of just a mental reset. You know, it's okay. Yeah. Like, yes, the NFL is entertainment. And yes, we support our team and we are fanatical about our team. And we don't want to hear about mental breaks because of what they get compensated and what they do, you know, on the grandest stage. Like, we don't want to hear about any of that. But the reality is like, they are human just like you and I, right? Yeah. I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine today. His kid fell off his bike yesterday, one of those electric bikes, cracked his head good, like was unconscious, had to go to the hospital, like a big to-do, right? Thankfully, he's all right. It could have been significantly worse, but we were talking about concussions, and he literally said, he's like, I'm never going to question these athletes from concussions again, seeing like what my own son's going through. And I was like, yeah, and we sit here with fans and we're like, oh, they'll clear the protocol by Saturday. Don't even worry about it. They'll be in the game Sunday. Like, we just dehumanize them because of what they do. And rightfully so at times, but not in that regard. Like, I'm pulling this all back to, it's been weird. It's been wonky. It's been all season. We can point to a million things. We'll never be able to find the thing that attributed to this for this year. Like, I think a lot of people, coaching, fans, players would benefit from all right, 2024 is going to be what it's going to be, out of our hands, right? Some things we can control. This is just not something we can control. The football god said, no, not this year.
Yeah, there's so many things with this team. Like, I don't think it's any one thing. You know, people saying like fire Nick Sorensen. You could do that, and this team would still look as bad as it does, because like there's so much going on, and it's hard to wrap my head around. It feels like with each week there's a new layer of just poor play that this 49ers team dives further into, and I think a lot of it just has to do with the mental aspect of it, because it almost feels like they're in a fight. They know they can't win. They'll say it, but you know, deep down, you just can't bring yourself there. I mean, the way Brendel has looked, for example, just looks like a guy, like he's plain defeated, like from the very start of games. And I mean, you hate to see that, but you have to get that off the field. I think, like there needs to be like some sort of message being sent, and the message needs to not be, hey, we've been here before, we can do it again. Like, it's trying to do the same thing over and over again. Because I think that message is tired. Like, yes, you have done it before, but I don't know. There just needs to be a different message, and a message that starts with, hey, like, this isn't working out, so we need to bench you, or you're going to have less playing time. We're going to work in someone else. Anyway, I don't want to continue beating the dead horse, because I think I've been on that soapbox pretty much this entire episode, but you know, that's just kind of where I'm at, where I think the team should be at a certain point. And
can I make one final statement on this?
Yeah.
I don't think Kyle Shanahan's going to do any of this.
I know, right?
What we just described. I don't think any of that is happening.
Why do you think that is, though, Weston? Like, why do you think that is? I've seen people say, like, you know, it's hard to cut your friends, or like bench your friends. Do you think like do you buy into that, to the idea that he's too much of a friend to some players? Like, he has his favorites and like doesn't want to move off of any of those guys?
It's a double-edged sword for a coach like Kyle, because part of that rapport that he has with the players is because he's a younger coach. He's a hip guy, right? Like, got a little swag about him. Carries himself like he is one of the players out there. And I think that makes him endearing to some players. As somebody like who professionally has managed people that you become close with, like, I don't care what you say, you develop that personal relationship. It's hard to move on from them, right? It's hard to separate friendship and business and professional. So yes, I do think that is a detriment to him at times. And I do think that is real, that it would be harder for him to cut Debo because they've been through so much together, right? Like the success is with one another, having that rapport, joking and laughing in locker rooms and comparing who's got the better sneaker game and who's dressed, the best showing up to the game, whatever it is, like the friendly internal banter and competitions that happen. It's hard to just shove that aside and be like, sorry, dude, you had a shit year. Like, we got to move on from you. When the player could just turn and be like, sorry, coach, you had a shit year too. Maybe they should just move on from you. Like, it just builds that tension. But I think some of those things are also what gives him an opportunity to become just as endearing to the next wave of people, right? And the next wave of players. And I would like to see him get off the stale relationships and try to build some new ones with the youth on this team and future players to be there. But that is the double-edged sword that is Kyle. Like, Bill Belichick was not interested in being anybody's boy. Like, let's just call it what it was. But you came to the Patriots, you went the Patriot way. Like, Kyle's just still too young that I don't think there's that vibe, right? He's not a Harbaugh. He's not a Belichick. He's not one of those. Like, he's still building his own success. And I think this is a problem that McVay faces, that I think the entire Shanahan tree faces, because they all have that vibe about them that they are player coaches, but it's because they probably develop friendships, and those are hard to move off of. But he's not going to do any of this because he wants to win.
And I'm sure too, like when you are young and you have young-ish players, like it's hard to not become friends with some of them. So like I understand that too, but you have to know when you have to separate yourself from that. And so, and I can't speak to, like, I don't know if Kyle does that. We don't know what conversations he has with those players. I would like to think that being someone's friend, whether you're their coach, whether manager, boss, whatever, that you are real with them.
Yeah.
And that includes having tough conversations with them, right? Calling them out, So I'd like to think that Kyle does those things. I can't say whether or not he does. I do not know, right? I just hope that like this offseason, because this offseason, I do think there's going to need to be some tough decisions. Like you might have to look some of your friends, some of your boys on this team and tell them like, this is the end of the road for you. We had to make a tough decision. And I think the players would understand that, because that's just like, that's the NFL. That's the business of the NFL, right? So, I just hope he wouldn't get discouraged to do that. But
I mean, if you still want to earn the respect of the league and the locker room, players aren't deaf, dumb, and blind either, right? Like they see and they can call out, like they don't call each other out, but every player in the locker room can tell you who played poorly that game, right? They all have a front row seat to it, and they all try to. So when you stack those games, you're like, all right, like that might be coach's boy, but boy, that guy's dragging us back or holding us back. They expect their leader to make those decisions. Like that's part of gathering their respect as well, which might endear them to you. And it's hard. It's hard. It's a business like anything else, and business discussions are hard discussions. It's tough, and no player who's dedicated their entire life to getting to where they are, and people have sacrificed so much, wants to hear that like you're not cutting it no more, right? Like Steph, if somebody came to you about pod and was like, "Sorry, Steph, this just ain't cutting it no more." Like, care how strong you think you are mentally, that stinks. That hurts,
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's got to happen though, because if not, it would be to the detriment of, I think, him and the team as well. So we'll see how it gets handled. In the next year, maybe we can revisit the conversation and see how the 49ers did in this case. But Weston, this week, if I had to, I know we do it every week, right? Like Monday, it's like, And I never want to be the kind of person that's like player of the week. We won't have it this week because I think they did that bad. Have we done that before? I don't think we
No,
have. Like I think
we've never not
tried.
given one player at
We've
least.
always tried.
Yes,
So like
absolutely.
yes, and I think I only have one player.
I actually have
You have more than one?
2.5.
2.5. That's
2.5.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
Okay. Well, I'll let you go first then.
So I won't take the obvious one then, right? That I think we both
Sure.
will
Sure.
agree on. But actually, believe it or not, I did not think that Jalen Moore played that bad of a game in a spot start at left tackle. I think the offensive line might have looked a little bit worse than it's been in games past. I mean, obviously, Brendel has had glaring moments of below mediocrity that like the whole world can see. If you're just like, even my wife watching, why is that guy just standing there? You know, like I don't know. It's a great question. Maybe we should ask him. But Jalen Moore. Left tackle is the most important position on this offensive line. The way they do things, they design everything to go left. At the end of the day, what do you have? 49 snaps, 32 pass blocking snaps. I think he allowed 1 or 2 pressures, which is actually not horrible for him. Didn't give up a sack and doing it with a rather stationary quarterback back there, not like Brock, who tends to dip out of that pocket, create a little bit more space and a little bit more time. That might have made his performance looked a little bit better, but he was the second highest rated offensive player according to PFF. And just given what my expectations were versus when you find out Trent Williams is not playing, I actually thought he pieced together a pretty good game for himself and put together some good tape.
You know what? I am glad you brought him up and that you nominated him because I forgot about Jalen Moore. That is a good thing.
You know what I mean? Like this guy's just hanging out, you know? Like
no, that's a good thing. Like I think at a certain point I forgot that like Trent wasn't playing. There, yeah. You know, like it wasn't a factor. It wasn't a factor in this game. There were many other factors in this game, but Jalen Moore was not an issue. It wasn't. He didn't contribute to the loss. That's a positive.
When you roll into a game like this game against the Packers, right? We always talk about this. What are the 3 most important positions on the football field? They tend to be your quarterback, your left tackle, and one of your edge rushers. They're at least that's the way it's compensated, right? Like in that order. And all 3 of your starters that have all pro attached to their name or pro ball attached to the name are not playing in the game. Typically that means you're probably going to lose the football game. But I think the biggest point about Jalen Moore is you didn't hear his name called. And that is all you can ask for when he's filling in for a future Hall of Fame player. I just thought he did I thought it was one of his better performances that I've ever seen because we've all seen how bad it can go for him on the field as well.
Yeah, like I said, glad you brought that up. Definitely one of his better performances that I can remember. I'll let you go again since you said that you had 2.5.
All right. I'm not going to take your other pro. I'm not going to take the main one here.
All right.
I'm actually going to go with Leonard Floyd.
Sure.
2 sacks, and this is solely on the sack game. And I know we all talk about how Floyd gets his sacks. He kind of just, it's like they call him garbage sacks. Like he just hangs around in the pass rush long enough and like creeps up on that quarterback. But he still had 2. And what have we been saying? That this defensive line, even with Bosa, doesn't get home. And now they're without Bosa. And honestly, you look up and down that line, at least as you're preparing for the game, 2, 3, 4 days out when you know Bosa's not playing. I mean, that's the only player that I'm worried about that's going to get pressure. And he still found a way to get home. The sacks came in. They weren't in garbage time either. They came in this game. Even though this was a 28-point loss, it never felt that out of hand till the back half of the 4th quarter, right? It always felt like one play, we don't get a holding on that second half kickoff. This game feels entirely different, right? If they punch it in for 7 points there instead of now starting back on your 20-yard line, like things like that. I honestly thought the Packers were watching this game. Packer fans were feeling like 49er fans, like up 14 points, but just watching like they're going to give this away. They're going to let this bad team hang around, and they're going to lose the football game. And for a while, I was believing it. I was like, oh my God, they might do something right
They
here.
might,
They
yeah, right.
might put it together. Of course, they didn't fail to disappoint. But back to Leonard Floyd. I think just getting home twice, not in his traditional manner, important downs, important parts of the game where it felt like it made an impact in that moment in time. And this is something that the 49ers have lacked all season is pressure and getting home, right? Completing the pressure. And he got home twice. So I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been putting together a solid season, and I feel like especially the second half of the season, he's really come along. It was his third 2-sack game this season, and he's had 3 of those since week 7. So like that's pretty good. That's pretty productive what he's doing. And yes, he is on pace to have over 10. He has 9 sacks on the season so far. And as you recall, one of the big things that people mentioned when he got signed was like he hasn't had less than like 9 sacks in a season, or 10, whatever it was, since like 2020. So that was one of the big selling points on Leonard Floyd, and he's been showing that he's definitely on pace to pass that. And yeah, I mean, you don't have Nick Bosa, you got to step up. And I would say he definitely stepped up in this one. All right, now let's wrap it up with the final one. I think he's been the bright spot in many Niner games this season, and when he was out last week, I think we missed him so. So it was nice to have him back. I think Brandon Allen liked having him as an option to throw to. Caught all 6 of his targets. He had 82 yards and a touchdown. Who would have thought, right? Like he's only had a touchdown in each of 3 of his last games that he's played in. George Kittle.
8 for the year already too. Something like that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yes, yeah, 8. There's only 2 games this season that he's played in that he hasn't scored a touchdown in.
And he hasn't played in 2 games too.
Yeah.
He's
this is crazy.
Yeah, Steph, honestly, I think you put a tweet out last night about, was it last night or maybe it was earlier today? It was something about Kittle, like, will we ever remember or thinking about how good he was or something to that effect. And it made me chuckle inside because you and I often talk about this. Like, he's a treasure. And he can't do this forever. And good news for George Kittle is he's probably going to be able to walk away before that decision is made for him, just the way that he plays this game. But as a 49ers, like there it is. Like that's how I feel right now, even talking about him, because I'm gonna miss this man. If and when that day comes, it's probably coming sooner rather than later. Like he's got his whole life ahead of him. He's got such a career out ahead of him and so many different things that he wants to do because he's such a personality. From him, I probably just gotta hit the ground running towards it. But the dude loves ball, right? Like he loves football. It's part of who he is. But yeah, in a game where it felt like nobody showed up, it felt like every time the ball was in his hands, like he was just looking to do that little bit extra, that little bit more. A game where it felt like people quit. I can promise you 85 did not quit. And I had a feeling this was going to. Just because it's the Packers and he always shows up against the Packers, that he was going to, because if you scour the NFL, whenever a backup quarterback is going to get the start, I promise you that tight end, if they're not named Travis Kelce, George Kittle, these top tier guys, that tight end is going to have the most targets they've ever had in their entire life in a single game, because a backup quarterback's best friend is the tight end. That is literally your best friend. And just felt like that was going to be the case a lot. They found him downfield more than I thought. I thought it was going to be a lot of like quick game to him and tight end screens and stuff like that, just to get the ball in his hands and run somebody over and excite, your sideline a little bit. But George Kittle is a treasure, and he's absolutely the 49K player of the week in this game, because I'm pretty sure he's the only one that truly showed up for all 60 minutes.
Jedi with the super chat. Thank you so much. The chat's been positive. I've seen some arguing, not with me, but I've seen some arguing in the live chat. But you guys have kept it positive for me, and I appreciate that. You guys are awesome. He said, "Thanks, Steph. You always put a smile on my face. Keep it up, man. Appreciate that. Thank you." And now I think if you guys are still feeling positive, let's just use a little bit of positivity we have left and put it towards voting for the 49K player of the week. We've got Jalen Moore, Leonard Floyd, George Kittle. I ended up pretty happy with this list.
Yeah,
Weston, it's not bad. All things considered.
I've worked hard on this one for you, Steph. I didn't want to come in with just like, no, the loss, one player. I even have somebody that I got flowers for. I got
you
flowers.
thought about it. You got flowers too.
Flowers.
Oh,
you got flowers?
Okay. No, definitely not.
I do. I'm giving it to the Rook, Slick Rick. I think they found a punt returner, Steph, and let me explain. Okay. It's not Cowing. He's too shaky back there. He's muffed a few. Yes, he probably is more explosive with the ball in his hands, but the biggest part about being a punt returner is fielding the punt, right? And doing so in an educated manner, not with your heels inside the 5-yard line. Like every once in a while, you got to let him coffin corner you. Like that's just going to happen. But Rick, to me, Cowing just looked like he wanted to field every punt. And I applaud the aggression. I do, especially out of a Rook. That's a lot of confidence. You got to like that. But everything was hitting the chest. It just didn't feel like, it felt like square peg, round hole. Ricky Pearsall yesterday caught everything clean. Nothing touching his body, everything in his hands. He's smooth with the ball. Like he looked like he was just surveying the field before making the catch. I think this is the Kyle Shanahan type punt returner that they're looking for. They're not looking for Devin Hester, Ted Ginn. I don't think they're looking for house calls. They're like, stop turning the ball over and giving short field. Stop making irrational decisions back there. And Ricky just feels like a little bit headier. I know he's a little older, a little bit more mature, got a little bit more experience on him, but everything that I saw back there, it felt more natural and more smooth in terms of returning the punts.
I gotta agree with that. I mean, yeah, I didn't think about him as someone to give flowers to, but I'm not mad at it. I mean, I think he did look comfortable and smooth. And yes, like the way he kind of looked for a lane after catching it, I think is encouraging, because sometimes you see the catch, which is good. You let out a sigh of relief when you see the catch, right, with this team. But after that, it's like you want to see a solid return too. And sometimes like you just see guys like run right into blocks.
What are you doing?
It's like so annoying. So I did appreciate Ricky looked like he was looking and kind of waiting for his blocks before making a decision, but like not dancing in the back either.
No.
So
right to the point.
It was efficient. Yes, he was efficient back there. I wouldn't mind him staying in that role. I mean, I think it would help build his confidence as well. So.
Listen, you want him to be a good receiver. And if you're finding it difficult to get him on the field, this is a way to get him on the field. And you will build his confidence if you can do this successfully. Because here's one thing I can promise you. There's not a single player on the football field that openly is like, I want to return punts. That is no man's land towards an execution in the National Football League. Have you seen these gunners block on the outside? They don't even touch anybody. They get run right by. You got two guys beelining it to you, depending upon how long that punter hangs it in the air. I think it's just an opportunity to get him on the field. And he looked good doing it to me.
Yeah, I like that one, giving him his flowers. Well, without saying the entire team, was there anyone you wanted to put on notice in particular in this game that maybe like we haven't before?
Fred Warner. I don't know how else to say it. Like, and it's not because I don't believe Fred is great. I think he's the best in the business. I just think he's not. He's pushing. He's trying to do too much. And in doing that, he's doing too darn little. And I'm sorry, Fred, but like fundamental football, man, you know what gap you are responsible for. You know how to take proper aim. You know how to do all of this. You're just not doing it, and it's fine. But if I'm being I've been hypercritical of other people. Why would I be any different towards a guy that makes a lot of money, is a captain of this, is the quarterback of this defense, a Hall of Fame, call him all pro Fred. Like, I expect more from 54. I don't know what else to say. I do. Or expect better, not more. I expect better from Fred.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think we should expect more. I think he would expect more from himself. Like he would be the first one to tell you that he wasn't good enough yesterday. I like that. As you put a captain on notice, I thought about another captain that I want to put on notice, man. Deebo Samuel, man. Yeah. Like, if you're gonna tell a player to lock in, that needed to lock in, like he wasn't wrong about that, right? I expect you at the very least to also lock in, and he has not done that these last few weeks. He has looked like a shell of himself much of this season, and that I think I can live with. But what upsets me the most, and what was even more disappointing, was the fact that he said no to speaking to the media yesterday.
Yeah.
Own up.
Yeah.
Own up. Face the music. That's 100%. Your music. And it doesn't sound great, but that's your music. That's what you're putting out on the field. You had an opportunity to catch that ball that was on a on the money throw from Brandon Allen through some traffic, over some defenders, hit Deebo's hands. You have to catch that. And I understand that, he did have the punt return or the kick return that was called back. That wasn't his fault. It was a nice return. But outside of that, like, I need you to take some accountability. He knows damn well the questions he was going to be getting. And with the, like,
oh yeah,
that he didn't want to answer it. You're a captain on this team. Like, I expect you to speak and take accountability for a performance like that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the scenarios where you just got to get up there and you say, I have to do better.
That's all you have to do.
It's I. It's not we. It's not them. It's
all you have to do.
And
it's really
right,
not that
wrong,
hard.
or indifferent. Like, that's how you gain the respect of your teammates. And I do think that was a poor decision on Deebo's behalf. I do think that's his own teammates will question that regardless of what they say. But it to me, this is the enigma that's Deebo Samuel. Like, that kickoff was a prime example of Deebo still has the juice when he is locked in and he tells himself, he came out and said, put me on the opening kickoff return. Yeah. I'm going to take this to the house. Just like the Cowboys playoff game where you see the clip all the time. Kyle, let's put it in the box right now. And he goes in, tells in the huddle, we're scoring on this play. And they do. That element of Deebo is still there. It's just not an element of focus. And here is also the truth. We've all said this. When you ask Deebo to be just a wide receiver, it's not going to go as well as you hope it's going to go, right? Like, he is a gadgety, gimmicky, and I don't say that as a negative. That's just the type of player he is. A little bit that's on Kyle to find different ways to use them that are not so predictable. But yes, $26 million a year, man. 2 of those balls hit you dead smack in the hands. Like, of course, no matter the degree of difficulty, you're expected to catch the ball. That's what you're paid for. And there's no bad hands in football. There's bad concentration. And that's what that is, right? Like, that's not locked in like he's telling his kicker to be. And who else he might have been saying it to over the previous 8 or 9 games. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just disappointing. So I hope, when he does speak to the media, this next week, that we do get some of that.
Own it and just say, like, hey, that's it. Bad move by me. I was hot after a game. I didn't play well. Like, there's still an opportunity to, like, but if you dismiss it again, he's going to have a problem. Like, he's going to have a media problem because they're going to be relentless on him. And it's just going to magnify what could have just been swept right under the rug in an instant,
Exactly. Don't want to make it a bigger thing than it is. So hopefully he does own up to it next time he speaks to the media. All right. Weston, do you have a vote for this week?
George Kittle.
George Kittle is mine as well. So George Kittle is your week 12 49K player of the week. He's been on a tear this season, really like one of the few bright spots for this team. And with all the talk about veterans and some guys not looking the same, George Kittle has remained the same for this team. He is a constant, and he is the positivity that this team needs and needs to kind of rally behind. So yeah, Kittle is all we have, man. Definitely feels like that at times. But Weston, this was again a good therapy session talking about the 49ers, and remember, it's not the 49ers worst. It was a 49ers worst loss of the season, but the worst loss of the season so far.
Yeah, can only go up from here, baby. I will say this, Steph, on this game, it actually panned out the way that I needed it to, because I had fantasy football talk here. I had Josh Jacobs and George Kittle, and it's in a playoff push league where it's a whole scenario. So it was like the perfect balance for me, like walking away from
You're
that. Consolation prize, right? Moral victory is the way to look at it. But I would trade a win over a fantasy win any day of the week.
Yeah, sure. I hear you on that. Now, this is going to be a different week for 49K. It's a holiday week, right? Holiday Thanksgiving on Thursday. So it'll change the schedule up a little bit. Tomorrow, Tuesday, I'm going to be doing Bully Ball on my YouTube and Gold Standard Network YouTube as well. Audio listeners, you could catch that on Gold Standard Network, wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure you guys check that out. Wednesday, still up in the air. Definitely not doing a show with Rob. He can't that day, but I might do either a solo show on Wednesday or move my show with Monica on Wednesday. So stay tuned. But for now, make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. But from me, from Weston, have a good rest of your Monday and enjoy the Hard Bowl. Both of the Hardball brother coaches are going to be playing each other Monday night. And Ravens, Chargers. That should be a good one.
And Steph, happy Thanksgiving to you and to your listeners, because I won't be back till next week, so I won't have a chance to wish them a happy Thanksgiving.
Right. Thank you. And you too as well. Say bye to your little buddy for me, and have a good rest of your night, everyone. For now, peace.